And we are recording. And yeah, I just emailed you the link with Deep State Marauder himself, Mr. Ivan Raiklin, on Tuesday, July 9th, 2024 at 1:07 p.m. Eastern time. And you can't tell, but he's actually on the International Space Station right now. The background is for OPSEC reasons because we do have a weaponized orbital platform. But I first saw your video right when I guess when you uploaded it. I had General Flynn on after that. But I watched that video, and above all else, it was just hilarious. That chick looking at you and talking like, well, what do you mean by this? And you're like, to the full extent of the law. And she's like, do you mean like arresting? And you're like, treasonous and all that follows. She was like, so like, is that like a felony or so? Mr. Raiklin, introduce
May
yourself.
5th, yeah, that was the epic May 15th attempted interview by National Poison Radio so-called reporter Zoe Chase, and she confronted me, well, attempted to confront me, right after the weaponization committee hearing had concluded. That was in mid-May. That Chairman Jordan is the chair of that committee, and she came up to me. I was literally packing my bag and walking out. She just came up to me and I guess recognized me from one of the previous Reawaken events. I don't really pay too much attention to the legacy media because they just don't. I mean, you guys, you can interpret it the way you want to. It's just that if you look at my background and when somebody that is that ignorant comes with those questions that claim to be these nationally recognized supposed podcasts or information purveyors, when they come to you like a petulant little 3-year-old, she wasn't petulant, but the novice and neophyte knowledge of what she's asking me about, it's a waste of my time, right? I'm not here to have followers. I'm here to help build leaders. And that's really not her purpose or legacy media's purpose. Their purpose is to distract and consume time of the lemmings of society. Like, so right then and there, from the very ab initio at the onset, our goals diverge 180 polar opposite. And she's part of that cabal. Add on top of that, she represents an industry, a cottage industry that is absolutely set, whether witting or unwitting, because of the limited IQ levels and knowledge of these individual actors that work for these corporations. They are, witting or unwitting, like I said, involved in the deliberate destruction of our constitutional order. So right there, you are my enemy. I'm not going to beat around the bush. So knowing that, I'm giving her the benefit of the doubt, thinking that she's an unwitting participant in that. That's the best case scenario. So that's the baseline upon which I start. Whether it's National Poison Radio or Washington Compost or New Woke Slimes or fake, folks from Fake Book that are censoring us, the whole disinformation complex and the censorship industrial complex. And then from there, based on her responses and her questions, we'll determine how I will treat that individual moving forward. And that's kind of what you saw me in my natural habitat, if you will, responding to someone of her ilk.
Yeah, when one of like the only real rules I have on my show is like if I have on a guest and they have a book, I read the book at the bare minimum. Just even if I don't and because I'll have on biochemists and theoretical physicists, and I'm like, I don't even pretend to understand it. But if you show at least an effort, you show at least an effort to be like, I think I kind of know where you're going with this. It at least just shows at the very least some form of respect and some form of preparation. It's if you can't understand an 8-year nuclear physics degree in an afternoon with a book, that's not your fault. We gotta at least try. So something like
Right.
that.
For example, yeah.
Yeah.
Another example I'll give you that's more current. So literally just a few minutes ago, before we started this podcast, uh, uh, one of these so-called, I just call them one of the disinformation purveyors from, I guess one of the bigger ones called Raw Sewage. I don't know if you heard of them, right? So anyway, Raw Sewage, I think it's the second attempt to reach out to me. So that's strike 2. And he's asking me, he left me a voicemail. I'm about to post it up online. and he asks me, "Hey, we're doing a story on your deep state target list." So the very first thing that comes to my mind is the radical, I guess the radicals that are on my list are leveraging, and again, those that are on my deep state target list, I still have to figure out which one. I think I can probably narrow it down about 2 or 3, are leveraging raw sewage to deploy one of their so-called reporters, disinformation creators, to go ahead and deploy to find out details on me so that they can use and take out components of that to help create their own narrative, because they have to discredit me because my profile is going up. Just like with General Flynn, anytime he does something and his profile goes up and he debunks and then pushes back against the lies against him, same thing with me. When there's nothing that they can find on us because they've already expended all resources to try to dig dirt on us, then they have to discredit us in the court of public opinion so that it puts fear in the lemmings that are their followers, so that they don't consume or pay attention to what we're working on. Because what we're working on is something that will literally castrate them. Does that make sense? I know that was a broad kind of response, but
No. It's what you do when you have nothing else to use, and it works in the short term. It's
right. And that's all they need to buy time going into, let's just start off with the RNC convention next week. They need to buy time going into the August DNC convention. And then they need to buy some more time going into November, because when you look at the content that I've put together in the collective, it is a deliberate, methodical, legal, moral, ethical, peaceful, and patriotic method via a timeline, a deliberate strategy to guarantee that we have free and fair elections that are 100% transparent. And if people listen to my strategy, meaning if Elon Musk buys into it and educates his 180 million followers, if Devin Nunes picks up on it and educate the 7 million people plus whatever it is on truth, and so on and so forth, if Joe Rogan picks up on it and Tucker Carlson picks up on it, now we're looking at the majority of the political kind of passerbys in American society that have leverage over the institutions that need to be educated on how to create this framework of a free, fair, and transparent election. It is a forcing function. Like I speak, it's amplified, it is self-executing, and then that blocks all the illegal shenanigans of all of the federal elections. It blocks the retail fraud. It blocks the wholesale fraud, the machine fraud, the algorithmic fraud, the ballot fraud, the mail-in ballot, the Dropbox ballot, for all of it. There's one simple solution to guarantee a free and fair election that avoids all of these levels of fraud. And in the wake of Elon Musk in the last 24 hours saying, hey, if you looked at his last couple tweets,
no, I have not.
He must be looking at the direct messages of those on my deep state target list based on his tweets and messaging, I would argue, because he is now in the camp of election denier, as raw sewage would call it. Because when you look at those tweets, if you want to pull them up,
yeah, I'll do it right now. He's
saying Dropboxes is like the most illegitimate thing ever. He's saying that there needs to be one-day in-person paper ballot hand count elections. The only way to do that in a very easy way under our current constitutional construct is for Elon Musk, if you're listening, with all due respect, which you have, with Tucker Carlson listening, with all due respect, which you have, with Joe Rogan, still yet to earn my respect because of his cowardice on certain subjects. But this is also for you, Joe Rogan. And here is the solution. When you read Article 2, Section 1, Clause 2 of our Constitution, Joe, Elon, and Tucker, and you see that it is the state legislatures of the respective states that allocate their presidential and vice presidential electors. then you can say, oh, wait, Ivan is right. All we have to do is request that the American society and all of their followers understand that you, American citizens, can go ahead and approach your state representatives, state senators, state house members, and demand that they convene a joint session in their state capital to then rule and vote on the electors that they will be transmitting for this 2024 election. And you can even pre-allocate them right now. What does that mean? Well, if you want to wait till after the convention, then you go ahead and pre-allocate it for the Republican nominee. And guess what? Under that framework, when you do the math, 274 electoral votes across the country are controlled by majority Republican legislatures. 270 is the magic number of majority. So it doesn't matter what happens at the RNC. It doesn't matter what happens at the DNC. What constitutionally matters is what the state legislatures in the collective are going to do. And I propose this: Elon, Tucker, and Joe, you need to demand that there is on November 5th, the state legislatures vote in their respective state capitals on live TV, C-SPAN amplifying it, Twitter also doing a live feed showing how every single of the approximately 7,000 state representatives across the entire country vote on who they're going to allocate those states' electors to. Can you imagine if a Republican says, you know what, I'm not voting for Trump? What will their constituents do to that Republican legislator? Because guess what? Under this framework, you know that all these folks are U.S. citizens because they're state reps. You know that all of them are already registered at a party, Democrat or Republican, right? And you know how many registered voters there are because each state has, you know exactly how many state reps there are and state senators. So then you do it one person, in person, one day, hand count, paper ballot. It's live streamed, folks. And then if these toxic, feckless cowards that some of them are in on the entire electoral fraud and heist, you think that they're going to have the courage to go ahead and vote against the Republican nominee before the whole world to hear and see? I don't think so. They're going to have to vote for their respective Republican nominee because guess what's going to happen to them? At a minimum, we're going to dispense with them just like we did with Liz Cheney, just like what we did with Adam Kinzinger, just like what we did with almost all of the impeachment 10 hoax voters that are Republican that sided with Jamie Raskin and Nancy Pelosi's cover-up of the January 6th Fedsurrection. That's at a minimum. I think in today's climate, the political consequences will be maximally greater because now the American public is ready for Anna Paulina Luna tomorrow, along with Speaker Johnson, to not just hold folks to account like the acting fake Attorney General Garland. We are ready for a live stream swatting raid to hold Merrick Garland in contempt of Congress, where Speaker Johnson orders his Sergeant at Arms, Bill McFarland, to go ahead and not do a soft knock, but do a hard knock on Merrick Garland's home in Maryland and haul him in to custody into the House body in Congress under the lawful inherent contempt powers of the Speaker via the Sergeant at Arms. That's the type of consequences that will be had at a minimum, especially with those that are from the state legislatures that decide to go against the will of their constituents that voted them in to vote according to how the constituents voted for that Republican. So think, people are directly connected maximally the most with their state reps. There are folks that have influence over that rep via and leverage because they're a business owner in that district. They're a law enforcement individual of that district. They have a family member that knows them. They go to the same schools, churches, you name it. It is the maximum authority that American citizens and constituents can provide over those that have the discretionary constitutional authority on allocating the presidential and vice presidential electors. When Elon Musk, Joe Rogan, and Tucker Carlson realize this and say, you know what? This probably is the only solution to guaranteeing free and fair elections where we know exactly who votes for whom and how in the most transparent way ever since the founding of our country, because that's how we conducted presidential and vice presidential elections back in the OG times of America.
Elon's tweets 17 hours ago. When combined with mail-in ballots, the system is designed to make it impossible to prove fraud. Um, uh, retweeting true. The White House has formally announced that Biden will veto the Republican bill that seeks to prevent non-citizens from voting. Let's see. 9 hours ago, electronic voting machines and anything mailed in is too risky. We should mandate paper ballots and in-person voting only. And then there was one more, I think, less than an hour ago. It was, oh no, it pinned. Yeah, pinned comment an hour ago. This is a more accurate description of what happens regarding voter fraud. So, when you take that, and then you
What
also
do you think based
what?
on what I said and what he's saying?
Yeah, no, so this is kind of how I look. So as someone that, I think my first YouTube strike was talking about like the following day after the
Me too.
election, talking about, yeah, no, I've been banned from there for almost 3 years, was talking about election fraud. I had on Dr. Robert Malone, who holds most of the patents on the mRNA vaccine, about 9 months
Yep.
before I went on Rogan. I got banned from YouTube for him and Dr. McCullough. So all
Yeah, I
these
think I watched
things,
that one.
yeah, so all these things that happen, I found that if you just stay the course and if you know at the very least it's a freedom of speech, regardless if it's true or not. You're allowed to say Elvis is an alien, like it's just free
Right, because
speech.
you're investigating what the truth is. You're
Sure,
testing your hypotheses.
and
You're
sure.
bringing in experts or those that you perceive to be experts to determine whether or not their evidence and their credibility is legit.
Sure. And so for me, it was always like, well, I'm not a doctor. If I pat myself in the back, I got into medical school, but I'm not a doctor. So I was like, I'm gonna go get I don't know, the guy that worked at Detra and the CIA and has these patents, Dr. Malone. And he came on. It was pretty like, vanilla. He was like, if you're a young, healthy guy, you probably shouldn't get it. Banned. And so, but all these things, right? And it's banned from YouTube, banned from
Nah, because
iTunes.
they're you know how you sign up to be an affiliate to sell product?
Yeah.
Basically all these big tech platforms are affiliates of,
The US, well, and the
at the
US
biggest
government.
level, right? You have the Chinese Communist Party's ambassador to the US, Biden. So
Yeah.
he's the affiliate play for China in our White House, right? Making them, because at the end of the day, how do they make money off of the 10% for the big guy? Well, every single policy he passes benefits China. And then when it comes down to like CommuTube, same thing. It's because big pharma is pumping in billions of dollars, right? That are being man. You make a lot of money when you force people to consume a product, right?
Yeah.
And so some of that money has to be distributed out to those that are your marketing wing of things, which is CommuTube, right? And Fakebook. So Suck a Buck and Sergey Brin and that crew, right?
So what I found though is like I'm just listening back to some old like comedy podcasts because I'm in the process of moving. I just got shit to do all day, and there you
Yeah,
can
like the Hodge twins.
yeah, right. No, but no, so no, my favorite comedian, Tim Dillon, who's actually just on Tucker, and he got big on Rogan, but he's talking about he's like, he's saying he's like, I don't know if I'm comfortable with getting this, and this is like summer 2020. He's like, whatever vaccine it is, and then see you next year, he's like, you guys, you got to go get it, and then you see the following year, he's like, they are attacking Rogan. It is kind of odd, but you can see throughout time to where now it's like pretty much, Cuomo was on that podcast like a month ago, and some guy just like he's like, no, you were pushing like dog shit on people. My point is that it does
No,
catch up.
Cuomo's an absolute scum.
Of course he is, but it
He's
does.
so two-faced. He's like, oh, I have this epiphany moment. Hey, punk. Hey, Chris, if you're listening in, Is this a rated R show?
No, you say what the fuck you want, man.
Okay. So look, punk, I would love to confront you in person with your you're like, I'm so strong. I think it's push-ups.
Meatball.
You're a total weak-minded little sissy punk because you were the one involved over at Criminal News Network pumping these unsafe and ineffective products. And now all of a sudden, I'm injured. You got no sympathy from me. In fact, you make me even more angry. And you know what? I'm going to bump you up on my deep state target list now because you're trying to protect yourself and say, but my brother, whatever. My brother went ahead and force murdered all these elderly
Nursing
by
homes.
putting them into elderly homes. Your brother is a mass murderer, and the way he was able to be a mass murderer is because you promoted what your brother Andy was pushing. So in my case, you are two of the biggest co-conspirators in the mass genocide of conservative elderly in New York. And we will deal with you accordingly.
Yeah, his epiphany moment was the same one that Werner von Braun had when he found out Adolf died. It was it's over. I gotta jump ship.
Yeah,
That's
exactly. That's a
his
great
epiphany wasn't I'm
analogy.
doing the wrong thing. His epiphany was Soviets, Americans, you're gonna be worked to death
I'm going to
there,
be on
or
a losing team, he's thinking. And he's like, I'm out.
he's worked to death in the gulag, or maybe I can go live in I don't know, maybe I can go live in Martha's Vineyard. I'm gonna go over there. But so like, but my point is with these things, and as someone who's always just stuck in, I'd like to say it's courage, but I think it's more so I'm just an Irish Catholic hard-headed asshole. But as you push these things forward, you can start to see as the Overton window shifts. And I've been
Yep.
waiting for the election fraud thing to slowly catch up, and I think you're starting to very slowly see it. And it's a lot like I
No,
was
I
just
think I
watching.
think once Elon puts it out and he puts it on
Yeah,
blast, I mean, I don't. He's not a dumb guy. I've
no,
said
no,
this
no.
for over a decade easily, probably going back to '98. So what are we at? 25 years, six
Yeah.
years? Never bet against Elon,
No,
never.
no,
And
he's
guess what? He's got a track record of
yeah.
absolutely obliterating the narrative. Okay,
And so
and so
that's how I look at it is it's like I was just watching one of this I don't know why I love this video, but it's this video of this nuclear powered Russian icebreaker, and it's like triple hulled, weighs like 1 million tons, and it goes up on the ice, the front of it does, and then the weight of the ship eventually cracks the ice and it pushes forward, and then commercial ships come behind it. That's kind of what it's like because you don't want to be painted as an alt-right conspiracy theorist. But as a
yeah, but he's
member of
got access to everybody's direct messages. So
well,
if you
that
take a look
too.
at my deep state target list, this is why they want more information on. They're trying to find out if I'm directly communicating with Elon. Well, that's for Elon to answer. Okay, that's not for me to answer. And people are asking like the question: Are you talking to Schellenberger and Taibbi? I've already said that. I've communicated with both of them. You got to ask Elon about the rest of it. Okay. Now, is it coincidental that he's talking about the same exact stuff? Remember, he said his pronouns are prosecute Fauci or something like that.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Remember, he said that Twitter is a crime scene. Hey, folks,
Yeah.
if Twitter is a crime scene, where do you think he has the evidence to say that it is a crime scene? Let me guess. Twitter direct messages of those on my deep state target list. Their internal Slack channel communication with those on my deep state target list, of those on my deep state target list under the rug. And as he's speaking under the rug, and as Kim.com is basically talking about direct messages, I don't know if you saw his tweet the other day. You can take a look at that one
I'll pull it
too.
up.
And I think Elon responded to it, if I'm not mistaken. Maybe not. It's almost as though good old Elon Musk is looking under the rug inside of all these communications. And now he's like, you know what? Wow. All these conspiracy theorists that he's now commenting on and reposting that he didn't in the past, I suspect that he has all the evidence. He has more blackmail on every single person on that deep state target list than the U.S. government has on their political opponents. Ha ha ha!
Yeah.
Leverage.
Yeah, and and that's all you need. And on one hand, it's
So when's he going to
infuriating.
release the mother of all Twitter files? Is the question.
Yeah, no, it's well, it is kind of awesome though, because I mean, he's got an orbital based internet. You can't really, and he owns Twitter now. So unlike
Well, he can go aggressive now because he's created his own entire ecosystem, right? He
well,
just needs the
precisely,
device. He needs to launch his device
he can
before the
launch.
money goes for sure.
Yeah, it's
And
well,
I recommend launch to be about September 1st,
yeah, it's
right
like
after Labor Day, right around that time frame.
it's like well, because like right after the November election, like the next day, right? They had the entire election fortification plan, right? Where lockstep, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, they all were putting those banners, election has not been called yet,
Yeah.
and it's like, well, how would he go about it this time? It's like, well, he owns Twitter, and it's like, well, you have to have internet, and he's like, well, he's got orbital internet, and he's like, well, you got to get it up to orbit, and he's like, well, he has the rockets to send them, and you're like, oh, oh no, like I don't think that's a guy that makes I think he's a risk taker, but I don't think he does outright gambles. I think he only goes in when
He's got all the cards laid out.
he's already got it figured out. He's already seen everyone else's card, and that's because he
He's
doesn't.
like, oh, you got to roll flush? I got something that beats that.
Yeah, and so
What do you beats that?
what does beat
5 aces, baby.
it's so but that's how I look at it is like you really don't even need to win over everyone. You have to just get a couple key figures to do something, and the reality is the vast majority of people are pussies, and they'll start doing it once someone else does, and no one wants to be the
I
first
wanted to hear
person.
your take on this.
Yeah,
Imagine Elon Musk. Yeah, imagine Elon, Joe Rogan, and Tucker basically say, "Hey, whoa, yeah, no, with the 4 months that we have left, we have no ability to like change and restart from scratch our electoral systems because there's so many machines, there's so many different things at play. The only consistent way to do it constitutionally is just to say, hey, you know what?
live
Let's
stream it.
let's live stream our state legislatures voting for allocating their electors. Done. Constitutionally sound, and then we'll take it from there.
And I also think that after 20, and I think especially after COVID as well, I think that the scarlet letter, the labeling of conspiracy theorists doesn't hold the weight it did years ago,
Yeah,
right?
I mean,
I
at
don't.
this point, I think everybody that was labeled conspiracy theorist that designation needs to be changed to conspiracy oracles, right?
Well, it has to be changed to just critical. That is the definition of critical thinking. I did undergraduate research when I was in college. I have a biology degree, but I did undergraduate research in aquatic toxicology. And the difference with doing research versus taking a course is if you take organic chemistry and you don't understand it, you can go to the back of the book and find the answer. And if you still don't understand it, you can go to a professor and they'll explain it to you. The thing about doing undergraduate research, where you're actually trying to figure something out, is when you go to the professor, you go, I don't know why this is poisoning this fish, and but this one doesn't. And they go, neither do I. That's why it's research, and that's why it looks so good on your resume. No one called it conspiracy theory. They called it independent thinking. They called it critical thinking to go, let's put out some hypotheses and figure out why
Funny,
fish in magnesium.
I
Yeah.
used to teach that at the Defense Intelligence Agency to all our intelligence community
Yeah.
at our premier program called the Combined Strategic Intelligence Training Program, where we offered it to our U.S. intelligence community intel analysts as well as our international partners.
Yeah. Critical thinking. That's the thing about it is that they want to
So
go,
now they weaponize me against them.
well, so that's the
Now they're
thing.
trying to deploy raw sewage on me. He's about to be in for a rude awakening. This disinformation purveyor
But I think that's where it's
from
getting.
Greensboro, North Carolina.
I think that's where those
I'll have
nukes
to
are,
pull up
right?
his address. What's
That's
that?
where, so well, that's where those hydrogen bombs are. No, that's South Carolina, Greensboro, the ones that
Hey, so
cracked.
real quick, because I need to bounce.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Last thing I wanted to say, if it's all right,
yeah.
you talked about strikes and CommiTube. So it's funny you mentioned that. I was just on. I did an in-person interview with Hodge Twins, right, in Las Vegas, episode 20, and they've had folks like RFK Jr., Vivek, Alex Stein. Let's see, Tim Kennedy, some other big names. Not a single one of those was censored. But as soon as they posted my interview, as I lay out the deep state by name, I named the individuals part of the censorship industrial complex at the FBI's field office in San Francisco, Jim Baker at Twitter, like Laura Demlow, Brian Otten, like all these names, right? And then we go into other subjects, and they censor that thing within hours.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So it begs the question, folks: am I telling lies and they don't want me to tell lies, or am I telling you something that is so in a fashion that is so compelling with all the evidence to support it? Because I walked in there with a stack of the most credible sources that are like the world has to back up my analytic assessment. When people see that, you can't unsee it. It is the most compelling piece of content because I spent the thousands of hours in order to put it together that no one else has. And that is why they have to censor it, because when you watch,
You just broke up. I don't know if you're there. As soon as you said censored, it died. I don't know if you're there. You froze up. Well, I don't know what the odds of that are. I will stay on until he hopefully pops back in. Oh, let's see if he rejoins. He might rejoin. Yeah, no, that's something that, that's something to ponder is, none of those get censored, none of those get taken down. I think by now, you know, I think by now the average person, I don't mean the person that's just always going down rabbit holes. I get it. I get that that's not the I was doing that instead of going to prom. So I get it that it's not like the norm. But I think by now the average human is like, well, it's not that, yeah, I don't know, you read about Pearl Harbor and 80 years later you start questioning it. You're seeing in a course of 3 years, 4 years, belief in the COVID vaccine going away. You're seeing in 2 years, belief in the Slava Ukraini is you're like, this is money laundering. The cycles are getting shorter and shorter and shorter. And that's insane. And I think the average human being now is kind of looking at this and they're like, well, what else is censored? And that's a scary moment, right? If you haven't ever kind of broached those topics before, that is I have sympathy for people. They have to start questioning their entire worldview. It's not fun. It's not fun at all. You're pulling Jengas out of the foundation that holds up your reality and your sense of recognition and control and ultimately an uncontrollable reality. And that's not fun, but when it's some distant, when you're in high school and you're just trying to get laid and you read about the Federal Reserve, you're like, I don't, that's funny. Yeah, whatever, man. And then there's also a feeling of like, it's just so far away and it's so powerful. It's the monetary system of the strongest government on earth. And this is a century ago. You're like, yeah, I can't, dude. I don't, 56 years before we went to the moon. But as the things start to as the conspiracies move, even 9/11, I have a lot of friends that served. But even that, it's still farther away. You were younger. There was a visceral, we got to go, kill the guys who did this. And I get that and I have sympathy for that. But as the cycles, the lifetimes, I don't know what's the correct with the periods, the epochs, as they get shorter and shorter, they also are getting closer and closer to home. And not just temporally, but quite literally geographically. Is it goes from that's 100 years ago to Gulf of Tonkin. You're like, that's 50 years ago, and then 9/11. You're like, well, that's 20 years ago, and then you're like, well, and then what else? And then Fast and Furious, and you're like, okay, and then you're like, well, Operation Sycamore Timber, and you're like, well, that funded ISIS. And you're like, that was weird. That was like 10 years ago, and then it's COVID, and you're like, well, that was 4 years ago, and then Ukraine, and you're like, that was like 2.5 years ago, and You just, the Biden laptop, the 50 intelligence officials come out and say this is, this is disinformation. And now you're looking at that, you're like, wait, no, hold on. And so it's not just moving closer and closer to where you are currently, you know, it's it's also coming closer and closer to where you are geographically. And by that I mean obviously it's closer temporally, but geographically it's you're like, well, hold on, I have to take this vaccine. So now this conspiracy it has teeth in your life. It's coming home and it's touching you. And you're going, oh, well, I have to get this thing. And I'm healthy, but is this a game of Russian roulette? How badly do I need this? And then you weigh social pressures versus, your fears. And unfortunately, I think a lot of people got it and, died. And that's horrifying. You're like, okay, or you have lasting effects, right? I've had on vaccine injured people who, are, they're in their 30s and they used to run marathons and now they can't walk. Like they literally can't walk. Or their right arm is paralyzed. Like crazy stuff. You're like, well, that's crazy. And then it's, well, and then you look at Ukraine, Russia, and you're like, well, that's the military industrial complex, and then you look at like the withdrawal from Afghanistan, and you're like, well, hold on. Well, now that's 13 guys died. You're like, well, that's hold on. And Ukraine, Russia, and you're like, all right, and that's kind of leading into kind of Ukraine or not Israel, Gaza in terms of just the general conflagrations. I think that's the right word. You're like, okay. And then you can start to see kind of where we were in 2022, sending weapons to Ukraine. We're doing that in Taiwan. It's much quieter, but we're moving it to Taiwan. And you're like, all right. And then they're moving the selective service age. And you're like, all right. And so now these conspiracies are less and less, for lack of a better word, fun, but ultimately apathetic in nature. It's was George Washington Illuminati Freemason? It's kind of hard to really dig your teeth into that because it's only he had a powdered wig. It's not it's 100 years before like the Wild West or whatever, 50 years. But as they get closer and closer, 1913, okay, Pearl Harbor, 1945, and then it's the Gulf of Tonkin, and then all right, and it's 9/11, and you're like, all right, and then it's bailouts, and you're like, okay, and it's getting closer and closer and closer to here, and it's becoming less and less just that thing you see on TV where it's Hillary's emails and Trump, and it's still like Trump's a billionaire president, and Hillary is, you know, husband's ex-president, she was Secretary of State. You're like, they're still kind of untouchable. They've got lifelong Secret Service details. They're wealthier than you can imagine, and whether or not Obama's birth certificate's real, you can't really touch it because he's an ex-president with a home in Martha's Vineyard and a security detail. You know, and it's there's a level of these things that are you're worried about the Andromeda galaxy colliding with our galaxy in 2 billion years. Ultimately, you go, I don't, whatever. Versus, you might be a little more worried about a forest fire on the horizon. And you're like, well, that, maybe we should gas up the car in case we got a skedaddle. And so these things are no longer just, well, one, rationally, you can't deny them anymore because you're seeing them start to come true. So just on a rational level, even if you're completely detached, let's just say you're 100 years old and you're on your deathbed. So one, rationally, you're like, I know I'm not going to be drafted and I'm not going to get the vax, but even your own kind of cognitive dissonance bubble, you're like, I am seeing these things become true at faster and faster cycles. Now imagine it's like, well, not only are they maybe becoming true, and I have to worry about being called a conspiracy theorist, because it used to be I was called a conspiracy theorist and I just didn't want to be made fun of by friends. But now, if I get this shot, I might have a foot long fibrant clot in my heart. And you're like, we're getting a little, we're getting a little closer. And you're like, well, that's okay. In high school, you're like, the peer pressure says, let's drink. And you're like, I'll drink. But it's like let's drink and we're gonna ride, and all of a sudden you're like, I don't. People do die drunk driving. You're like, I don't know if I want to do that one. So that personal preservation instinct starts to overpower the social ostracization instinct, which is you want to avoid being socially ostracized, outcast, right? That is the even if there's a joke that I don't know who said it, but it's like where do they put prisoners? People who are surrounded by other murderers. What do they do when they're punished? They put them in solitary confinement. They don't let them be around other murderers, and that's the punishment. So my point is as these cycles are getting closer and closer, so one cognitively, you can no longer deny them because you're starting to see them come true. And then independent of that, but they are intertwined. But even if they weren't, let's just say this independent, now there's the self-preservation. You're like, okay, get made fun of, but or I might die from that clot. Get made fun of, or I might be drafted. I might be drafted to go. I mean that chick at UGA that was killed a couple months ago by an illegal immigrant. She was killed by the running path in the woods near the IM fields, the intramural fields. I used to park there when I went to the University of Georgia. My girlfriend at the time she used to run there. And so now you're like, it's getting a little closer to home. You're like, okay, you know, that the fire is now it's a couple blocks away and you see other buildings going up and you're like, how fireproof is this building? And then the draft age, you're like, well, 18 to 26, you're like, okay, I'm 33. The reality is during World War, they will move that draft number up as far as they want. You can still stand, you can still, your arms work, your eyes work, you're going. And if you can't, you're going to go screw on artillery caps at a war material factory. And if you can't do that, you're going to analyze maps. And if you're going to do something, at the very least, you're going to knit uniforms. Like you are going to be involved. But you have younger people now who are like, I don't know if I want to go die in a trench in Taiwan. You're like, hold on, this is getting a little there are Russian subs off the coast. You're like, this is getting a little hotter and hotter and hotter. So you're having almost this lubricant, right? When you pound a couple drinks and then all of a sudden you got the balls to go talk to the girl. That's kind of happening, but you're starting to have the balls to you don't care that your friends are watching, you don't care that her friends are watching. You also you're caring a little less that if it doesn't work you're gonna get made fun of. You're like, whatever, I'm just going for it, man, what do I care? And we're starting to have that because it's like screw it. Now the thing about screw it is then you wake up and you're sober and you're like, oh, that sucked. The thing about this though is like the implications are that like it's screw it, but there is no waking up. It's screw it, you die from a blood clot. It's screw it, you go die in some foreign war. You say screw it, you get stabbed by some illegal immigrant. And all these things are coming closer and closer and closer. The fire is it's you're starting to see the flames dance off the windows. And so now the things that would normally hold you back, one, your own cognitive dissonance, those are far right conspiracies as well as you're like, well, now what are the implications? The implications are I get called a conspiracy theorist and made fun of, and that's no longer a pejorative because more and more people are called conspiracy theorists, just like it means nothing to call someone a racist or a Nazi anymore. But then what are the pros? How is it outweighed? You're like, well, maybe if enough people start talking about this, they won't be so gung ho to go throw me and my entire, group of high school buddies to go get blown up by a Chinese artillery shell. If I'm wrong, I get made fun of for something that you can't really be made fun of for anymore because everyone is a conspiracy theorist. And it's it's starting to the seesaw is really starting to you can hear it's tipping, right? It's that feeling when you're watching a football game or a basketball game and they're starting to come back and the momentum's changing and they start getting steals, they start getting blocks, they start getting offensive rebounds, they start, alley-oop and 3-point swish, swish, and the crowd starts getting more and more electric. You can feel it starting to turn. And it's like, oh man, they might do this. And then the barrier to entry is less and less and less. You no longer have to be courageous. It's just it starts to become, there's what's the quote? It costs nothing to be the second patriot, right? It's the person who stands up and does the right thing first. And it's really starting to drift in that direction. So you have more and more people who are now like, you know, stolen elections have consequences. But now you're looking at 4 years of like, you can actually finance a dozen eggs now. You don't have to pay it all at once. You can actually finance like a weekly. It's like $1, but people are like, I can now finance my eggs. It's getting a little spicy, and it's gonna be. And if you think it can't happen, I would say look at something as simple as like Joe Rogan leaving LA and going to Austin. I think he talked about it to his credit. He was very open about it. He was like, I've worked hard my entire life. I have a nice house and I have kids. And he's like, but I'm seeing like crazy people outside pushing shopping carts, screaming. And he's like, I don't want any part of this. And you go, well, LA is the hub of podcasts and celebrities and movies and truly everything trashy about this planet, including my own podcast. But now you look at Austin, and there's been a total exodus. Now, I'm not going to live in Austin because I hate the heat. I hate Texas, and it means nothing to me. And I don't ever want to meet real people in my life. I like sitting behind a screen and not actually seeing you, touching you, getting your dirty fingerprints on my table. I don't come near me, please. But it can happen. It absolutely can happen. Even the immutable, untouchable COVID narrative from your favorite celebrities going, get the shot, go out and get the shot, to, the vaccine, Stephen Colbert, who probably sold his soul during some occult black magic ritual out in Bohemian Grove or on Epstein's Island as they're sacrificing a child to Moloch. Like, that's now laughable to the average person, not just people like me who are just, I find the conspiracy in everything because I don't know, I'm probably mentally unhinged. But that has changed. You've gone from Slava Ukraine to like, how much more money are we sending to, videos of the first person drones with like the Semtex on them and they're like blowing up a dude who's surrendering. And you're like, wait, what is this? You're like, I don't know about. And then you have me who's like, yeah, you know what? You do October 7th, you're gonna get spanked. And then you even have me who like 9 months later, I'm like, man, you kind of are just like demolishing this entire place, right? And it starts to you can no longer avoid and ignore the cracks. It is no longer applicable to just push it out of your mind. It's coming home. At the very least, we can unplug from everything. You can turn off. You can just delete every social media app. Go order some Taco Bell, man. Go order some Taco Bell. Like legit. Like I used to get like shit faced on a Thursday night. I would order tacos. Man, that went from like 15 bucks plus tip and delivery fee to like 40. And so even if you're completely unplugged from everything, you can no longer avoid like you're like, dude, I can't buy anything anymore. And so I think for all of these reasons, you're gonna see people starting to maybe at the very least entertain the idea of election fraud. Which is what I can hope. I mean, and I'm being wildly positive. For all I know, the average person is still just grazing at a trough farting. I don't know. But it's as the great Tim Dillon said. As the great Tim Dillon said. How long have I been gone? As the great Tim Dillon said, the United States is a corporation. And he was saying this when Trump was in office. And he goes, and 50% of the employees are convinced that the CEO is great, Trump, and 50% are convinced the CEO is trying to kill them. And the 50% that like him are going, he's not trying to kill you, relax. But every once in a while, he tweets out something fun. He's like, I'm going to kill you. I'm just kidding. He's like, regardless if he actually wants to kill you, that is absolutely problematic for a functioning work environment, for shareholders, for investors, for quarterly reports, for everything. And so, for that reason alone, there can't be questions about the integrity of an election. It sucks when your guy doesn't win, but there's also, there's some peace in it because you go, well, the majority of people wanted this, and for the same reason capitalism will always just, demolish communism or centrally planned governments is because It's every single mind, every single point, every single node is a self-aware human being with their own interests who can, you know, prioritize things in a list far better than any centralized government ever could. And so if your guy loses in a free and fair election, there also is some piece that you go, well, the majority of people did vote for the other guy who have light and they all have life experience from every walk of the earth. So the greater data set has actually chosen that. And you go, well, maybe I am wrong. And there's some like peace in that. And you're all right, okay. But if there's no peace in that, and for the same reason, I would say if Biden was leading and in the middle of the night everything stopped and reversed, in no way. Why is there a fly there? Get it. That's a ladybug. All right, you can stay. You can't you couldn't with a clear conscience say everything's fine. You would look at that and go, the left should be rioting because there was some fuckery there. And that's you have to, and maybe I'm being naive, hoping for any sort of, dignity, you know, but you do have to, there has to be free, that has to be free and fair. It can't go on of people just not accepting it and having legitimate reason to be scared or to be hesitant of accepting it. It's gonna just, that might be the purpose. That might be the design is, yes, is to do, sow division. Um, but for that reason alone, I would implore people to, at the very least, keep your mind open. Keep your mind open. Use your own wisdom that you've gathered from your own lifetime. I'm not even asking you to go, did the UK send John Wilkes Booth to go kill Lincoln for revenge of, what? I'm just asking you to look at things that are in your face now. Not even not even 9/11, not even any of that. Just look at it now. Look at what you saw with the unfolding of COVID over 4 years. Look at what you saw with, the unfolding of Ukraine, or look at what you saw at the unfolding of Israel and Gaza. And then this is what I always tell people is you don't even need to argue it in front of other people because that's a giant hindrance. That's a giant thing of like, well, I don't want to look this way, or I don't want to argue with family, and I get that. So I'm not even asking you to do that. You don't need to be an idiot like me and get on a podcast and yell about what you believe in for all to see, and you don't actually know who saw it. Just ask yourself in the quiet of your own mind. You're just sitting there looking out, or you know, kind of tapping your feet, or you're on the treadmill, or just whatever. Just ask yourself in the quiet of your own mind, is it possible that there is legitimate fraud from an entrenched power, just from the things you've seen in the last 40? And you don't have to tell anyone, if you're a classically liberal person and you're like, I'd rather die than, say anything that could even be misconstrued as support for Trump. Hey, I get it, you know, social cohesion, friends, family. You don't want to be that guy. You're just keeping your head down. You're going to work. You're trying to get your retire. I get it. I'm not asking you to go be some radical in the streets. Just in the quiet of your own mind, ask yourself that and answer that. Don't tell anyone else. You don't need to do it because again, that will affect your answers, is how you respond, and or if you have to respond in front of other people, right? So don't you don't even need to tell anyone that you're watching this podcast. You can, somebody walks in on you watching, you go, oh, this far right. I mean, I'm just, what a wackadoodle. That's fine. I don't care. But ask yourself in your own mind, just in that quiet moment of in bed, is there a chance that it's maybe not what it seems like? Is that possible? and go forward from there. And that's all I really say to anybody is, you don't need to go crazy. You don't need to go screaming in the streets and abandon your I get it. I get friends and family. And you're not even wrong. Keeping good relationships with your friends and family is almost more important. You'd be like, yeah, stolen elections have consequences, but these are the people I talk to every day, and they're in my immediate vicinity, and I see them at the bar. Hey, you know what? I don't even disagree with you. It's probably more important to keep all that on an even keel. But that's all I would say. Is just in the quiet of your own mind, ask yourself anything. You know, ask yourself, why am I telling you this? Is Tommy a Fed? I'm not, but you should ask yourself that. You should go and look at my old episodes and be like, where's his agenda? Just question it all. You don't have to tell anyone, but just in your own mind, really just be honest with yourself. And I promise you, you will feel a greater level of peace, if not with the world, but with yourself. And so, with that, thank you so much for watching, everybody. Hope to get Ivan on here again sometime. He's a cool guy. And yeah, I will see you guys tomorrow. Much love, everybody. Thank you so much for watching. Peace.